The AlphaTrifecta: carbon dioxide accelerating Alzheimer's, autism, and ADHD. People's reaction to global warming echo the four reasons that people do the wrong thing: stupid, naive, ignorant, and dishonest. Stupid people just can't learn or know anything, so they do wrong things. Global warming has no meaning to them. Naive people are smart enough to understand, but have not had access to the knowledge from which to learn to do the right thing. The noble savage in the wild burns land to flush animals for eating and clothing, without knowing he is killing his future. Ignorant people ignore knowing. That is, they choose not to know because they are lazy or have a greater truth, e.g., free salvation, free eternal life, that makes global warming a non-issue. Dishonest people think they can avoid the consequences of their actions. That is, they know global warming is happening, but they will avoid the consequences. The worst example of these dishonest people are the petrophiliacs, who think their oil-based wealth will buy them freedom from global dying. Not true. A universal equalizer of global dying for all classes of wrongdoers, stupid, naive, ignorant, and dishonest, is the AlphaTrifecta: Alzheimer's, autism, and ADHD. Medical research has shown numerous diseases in which CO2 potentiates or worsens the condition: osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, multiple sclerosis, and arteriosclerosis, as well as some skin diseases and some cancers. Alzheimer's is affected by CO2, and why not? After water and oxygen, carbon dioxide is the most important molecule in living tissue and for life. It has been shown that people who smoke, that is, combust carbohydrates, tobacco, into CO2, have a significantly higher rate of Alzheimer's. The rise in Alzheimer's rates is more than more people are living longer. More scary is the recent development of adolescent Alzheimer's. The disturbing increases in ADHD raise similar concerns. Equally disturbing is the increase of autism. One can argue that carbon dioxide is behind these accelerating rates of mental dysfunction. That is, CO2 poisoning diminishes mental capacities at all ages. If true, the dishonest wrongdoers of global dying cannot buy their way out of global dying because they and theirs breathe the same air. There are no cures to the AlphaTrifecta ills. Autism, ADHD, and Alzheimer's are blind to one's bank account. For a baby, a teenager, or a geriatric, the AlphaTrifecta may be potentiated with each breath, whether in a hovel or a mansion, or whether in a slum or a suburb. Carbon dioxide is like HIV, only with a more potent, widespread, and silent impact on living tissue. Early misconceptions about rising carbon dioxide benefiting crops shows how mental functions are harmed by higher CO2 concentrations. Research shows that carbon dioxide only helps evolutionarily old plants rather than newly evolved plants. This dichotomy shows up in how ragweed, poison ivy, kudzu, softwood, and other trash plants are thriving from the higher levels of carbon dioxide. Poison ivy not only grows faster, but the potency of the rash-causing resin has increased in the plants. Ragweed produces twice as much pollen as it did only a few years ago. The faster growth of noxious plants and trees has a negative effect on the food chain, as they monopolize water and sunlight, causing higher farming costs for their removal. Harmed by the rising CO2 are the newer evolved plants, including hardwoods and hard grains, corn, wheat, and rice. Similar changes based on stages of evolution can be found in the animal kingdom. Primitive, less evolved animals are thriving. For example, bedbugs. Very telling is the simple bedbug detector that one can construct by dropping a chip of dry ice, frozen carbon dioxide, into a jar. As the CO2 is released, it spreads out on the floor like a dry ice fog. bed bugs will follow the CO2 upwind to the jar. At the other end of the insect evolutionary continuum is the demise of bees. Bees are highly organized social animals that are dying from rising CO2 levels, unlike the thriving bedbugs. The CO2 split personality, based on the evolutionary age of the living mass, is borne out in the changes wrought by carbon dioxide on the growth of the newly evolved plants from fertilization to maturation. The principle of ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, states the individual development of a higher species repeats the evolutionary stages of that species. Higher animals progress from fertilization through evolutionary stages before reaching maturation. This can be seen in how human embryos look like fish, with fetuses having tails. CO2 studies of recently evolved plants have found that higher carbon dioxide causes an early jackrabbit spurt of growth that levels off before growth becomes tortoise slow, with a retarded level of maturation. In other words, when a higher species experiences higher carbon dioxide levels, it grows quickly at the start of its life with an eventual lessening of the later, higher evolved traits. Many reasons have been given for the earlier onset of puberty in the last century, from mid-teens to 10 or less. An additional consideration should be the role of higher carbon dioxide levels. In his 4,000 square foot garden, also known as his mental health clinic, this writer has noticed over the years that plants are maturing earlier and at shorter plant heights. In 2011, he noticed for the first time that peppers were dragging the ground. One might say that this picture of him picking tomatoes from a 19-foot plant is a contradiction. No. In this discussion of carbon dioxide affecting plants and animals based on their evolutionary maturity, please recall the timistic organic thesis that CO2 is changed in precipitation patterns by desiccating property. Consider the observation that the steps most pertinent to the invasion of land appear to have involved the evolution of desiccation resistance. For many reasons, rising CO2 regresses life backwards on the evolutionary ladder. Among the living tissue on Earth, the human brain is the most sophisticated and evolved. If CO2 harms the highly evolved, the conclusion that the most evolved biomatter on Earth, the human brain, is affected like the other recently evolved plants and animals is a fair and sad conclusion. From the AlphaTrifecta, a conclusion is obvious. Not only is carbon dioxide causing global droughts and deluges, but it is also causing global warming. Mother Nature, God's accountant on Earth, is balancing her books by punishing CO2 sending human beings. An example is the rise in autism. Parents of autistic kids believe a phony study showing a link between vaccines and autism. It's the parents. Most of these parents travel to the courtroom for the litigation against vaccine makers in gas-guzzling, CO2-sending SUVs. The lifetime cost of caring for an autistic person is estimated at $2.5 to $3.5 million, or about 2.5 to 3.5 the lifetime earnings of the average worker. Thus, if 10% of newborns have some form of autism, and the average care cost is 3 times the average salary, that means about 40% of the population will be either autistic or autistic caretakers. Who is going to tie the bear on this cat's tail? The answer is in this photo: poverty. The current cradle-to-grave cost of AlphaTrifecta is unsustainable. But all is good in the mind of the average American who has replaced the work ethic with the play pathos. America has the highest paid players in the world that are the centers of massive CO2 sending to attend sports games. Because we glorify and reward players, we encourage after-school play instead of study. America's sports industry is the largest in the world in dollar value and percentage of GDP. Our education is obsessed with sports from elementary school to higher education. In recent decades, the teeter-totter relation of the work ethic to the play pathos in education has shown up in higher sports scores and lower math and science scores. Paralleling the low math and science scores are Americans who indicate a lack of basic skills and knowledge in rejecting evolution. The wrong direction of American education underlies why Americans feel the country is going in the wrong direction. Which do our media weathermen discuss more, global warming or sports playing? Did anyone tell Shimkus about how his God allowed both the U.S. and Russia to have enough nuclear weapons to destroy life on Earth many, many times? If Shimkus' God didn't worry about mad, mutual assured destruction, why should he care about a one-time CAD, carbon-accelerated death? America does not work anymore because we are obsessed with play. Our existential and environmental meltdown is a politically inspired and parentally aided substitution of the play pathos for the work ethic. Americans do not have the integrity of intellect and intelligence to define problems, let alone solve them. All play makes Jack and Jill desperate, destitute, and demised. It is a vicious cycle. As the elephant in the room, CO2 sinning destroys jobs and brains. Humanity will have less time, money, and wits to solve the problems.